All right, so it's me again. Yay. Okay. Just for a few minutes, though, and it feels a little weird to kind of be coming at the tail end of the conference and say, who the hell are these people? So who are the ROS1ders? If you could advance this slide, please. So this is a bit of a review, but I thought it'd be fun to show this poster. We've been talking a lot. Janet and I have both referenced that 2015 conference in Washington, D.C., where these 5 co-founding members of the ROS1ders met up. So that on the left there is Stuart Grief. We lost him several years ago. Me, then Tori Tamalia, which many of you may recognize, Janet, and Lisa Bonanno. So those were the 5 of us who met in 2015. And what really lit a fire under our butts was not only being kind of this minority within a minority within a minority, but the realization that we could no longer ride the coattails of the ALK or ALK positive patients. So this was 2015. All of us, all 5 of us were on Xalkori, and along with most ALK or ALK patients, and it was working great. So there are many more ALK patients than there are ROS1, and we thought, fantastic, we can just ride their coattails and take whatever drugs work for them going forward. But the very next drug that came out, alectinib, very soon we learned that it did not work for ROS1 patients. And we realized that we were going to have to advocate for ourselves. We needed ROS1 specific treatments, we needed ROS1 specific research, we needed our own community. And so that is what inspired us to start the Facebook group. And then a few months later, Janet and I cornered poor Dr. Kamage in the lobby just down the road at the Denver Convention Center. I'm sure he wanted a bathroom break or something, and we were like, save our lives, please. How can we get more research? Tell us everything now, right now. And he's like, you have to have a cohort of enough, like the problem was researchers couldn't do valid scientific research with just 5 of us. They needed many, many more ROS1 patients. So that made us become much more proactive. We didn't just rely on having this dormant Facebook site where people could come to us, but Tori, Janet, and I, and Lisa, we were all scouring the internet for any mention of ROS1 patients. We would find news stories in local papers in far off places about this unusual, never smoking patient who had this weird type of cancer, and then we would send them these unsolicited emails and call them, track them. I mean, we were psychotic, and gradually, we'd get excited if we got 1 or 2 new patients a month, and now look where we are. So that was the motivation. Was to get out of ALK's shadow and create a cohort large enough and then begin studying or begin stimulating research into our type of cancer. So I'll let Janet take it from here.
So when we started doing research, we were very naive, and we felt that, if we get tagged up with a researcher and we get some money, everything will go great. And we learned a lot of lessons along the way. Our first attempt was partnering with a major foundation because we couldn't raise money without being a legal entity. So we raised money with them and then formed partnerships to make the cancer models, if you remember the Cancer Model Project. And we also started collecting data about the ROS1ders so that we could try and find something about us that we had in common or that would be useful in our treatments. And we got data on about 100 patients, which we thought was wonderful. And then we discovered that the way that the contract had been written with the researcher, we could never see the data. It's locked up in Stanford. We'll never see it. And then we learned that we needed to be a little more proactive about our own research. So I was already involved with the University of Colorado and started talking with them. And that's how Dr. Bob Doble got involved, and we were making cell lines together with him. So thanks to that effort, there are now 12 ROS1 cell lines available to any researcher who wants them to learn more about us. And there's been papers published on us, which is great. But research keeps changing. Dr. Doble left academia and went to industry. And his cell lines are still here at the University of Colorado, but there is no lab to distribute them to everybody else because you have to have an employee who's being paid to do that. So we're trying to keep up on research as we go. And eventually we realized that we wanted to be able to decide how our research was being done. We wanted to make sure that any data that was generated was going to be shared widely. And we decided to do our own seed grants. So we now have done 3 seed grants. One of them you heard about yesterday with the mouse models. Another one is in Germany, in Cologne, because they are building a database of ROS1 patients in Germany, and we funded the effort to make it international so that they can bring in patients from elsewhere in Europe. So what they learned about going across country boundaries, we can apply to the US and any other project that we do. We also then received a very generous donation to fund an entire seed grant, and that is at Massachusetts General Hospital with Dr. Iafredi, who was the pathologist that helped found out that crizotinib worked for ROS1 as well as ALK. And he's looking at a different pathway in the cell that we might be able to use for new treatments when TKIs stop working. We have a whole new round of seed grants being evaluated right now, and we'll make some new announcements in the fall. But we've got enough of a reputation that doctors are coming to us and asking us when we're going to be releasing more grants. So we've been working very hard to maintain a good reputation with the researchers, and they know that the information in our group is medically vetted, that we're very careful to try and keep misinformation out of the group, that we're talking to the top researchers and bringing their information in. We have a scientific advisory board with people like Dr. Camage and Dr. Lin, who are on that board giving us advice about what's the best next thing for us to do. So we've got a really good foundation, but what we need now is money. And I think Amy has a few things to say about that.
I might. Drea, would you please come join us on the stage? I'm going to bring up another ROS1der, because one of the things that we wanted to get to today is when we're talking about who are the ROS1ders, we, all of us, are the ROS1ders. Yes, we have a committee of people that are the drivers that are making decisions, but every one of us is a ROS1der. And Drea is one of our newer ROS1ders who has a great story to tell you about all of our favorite topics, fundraising. There we go.
Also, just warning you, I haven't done this before, so I'm gonna rely on my handy-dandy cards. But as you all have heard, my name is Drea Cornejo. I was diagnosed with stage 4 non-small cell lung cancer at just 26 years old in 2022. When I was first admitted to the ER, I had cancer spread across both lungs, up and down my spine and pelvis, and not even my noggin was spared. To add insult to injury, I was also dealing with an infected clot by my heart, sepsis, and far too many pulmonary embolisms for my liking. But just a couple weeks after this hellish nightmare began, a sliver of good news. My biomarker test detected a ROS1 mutation. Never would have thought I'd be celebrating having a mutation. This meant that I could stop the platinum-based chemo that I was initially put on, which had definitely kicked my ass, and I get started on my first targeted treatment, entrectinib. And much to my surprise, my next follow-up scan showed great response. I started gaining back some of the 30 or 35 pounds I lost. I no longer needed oxygen at night. I could even walk my dogs down the street without gasping for air. And I no longer thought I was going to croak at the 3-month mark, much like my first oncologist wrongly suggested. It has now been 2 years since that initial diagnosis, and I'm lucky enough to be living a relatively normal life, thanks to my beloved entrectinib. Most of my TKI symptoms have subsided. I strength train 4 or 5 times a week, although I haven't been on top of it this week, don't tell my trainer. I take my now one dog on mile-long hikes and romps around the beach. I wake up every day filled with gratitude and a goal to make the most out of whatever time I have left. And most importantly, I remain hopeful for better and newer treatments for ROS1 cancer. But that can't happen without research funding. That's why every year, for Lung Cancer Awareness Month, I've decided to do my part and host a series of fundraisers to raise money for ROS1 positive cancer research. Last November, I did everything from a plant and bake sale to Florida-themed care packages for my DC colleagues, and even an in-person fundraiser at my local climbing gym. And much to my mother's disbelief, I even modeled for a figure drawing sketch class in nothing but my birthday suit. In just 1 month, we raised over $5,000, all while doing the things I love. Because I also just wanted to remind my friends and family that my disease is not all I am. And well, these fundraisers also helped me feel like I had some sort of control, like I was contributing in some way despite the crappy cards that I was dealt. And that's what I want to remind you all. We may not have any direct control of our disease progression, but we can sure as hell control how we respond to it and how we choose to spend the rest of the time we have on this lovely, sometimes dumpster fire of a planet.
So I happen to know that Drea is not a professional fundraiser, so I find her story amazing. And when she I think posted in the group about it, the drivers were like, wow, look at this powerhouse fundraiser. And to find out that she wasn't a fundraiser by trade, we kind of wanted to know a little bit more. So Drea, can you tell us how you were able to talk your local climbing gym into doing a fundraiser?
Yeah, it actually wasn't that complicated. Folks are usually very excited to help with good causes like ours. And so I just started by first developing a relationship with the event coordinator at my local climbing gym. It was a gym that I had been frequenting for 5 or 6 months at that time. I had gotten to know a lot of the employees. I just shared my personal story and why I so desperately wanted to make something meaningful out of this insidious roommate of mine who doesn't even pay for rent. And they were all ears. And so we decided on the last Saturday of the month, or I think it was a Sunday actually. Sundays are their best days, so I was happy about that. They offered us to give us a cut of their daily proceeds to whoever mentioned the fundraiser, and they also allowed me to man a table with information on lung cancer screening as well as selling baked goods and plants. And it was just really rewarding to see, the fact that we were raising money for such an important cause, but also being able to educate others on early screening.
I know you did some other plant and bake sales. How did you find a space to sell what you had baked?
So those fundraisers were definitely a little bit more DIY. It was more tailored to my friends and family. I just picked one Saturday that month to host the plant and bake sale in my very own backyard. It was super fun having so many different visitors partake in tres leches, blueberry muffins, pound cake, although my brother would probably tell you they weren't all that good. Whatever plants I didn't sell, I posted on social media, and they ended up in places as far as Arizona and Ohio. And you know that the plants are sturdy enough to make it that far because they survived a cancer diagnosis.
I'm not going to ask you if you have a picture of you posting for our class.
Yeah, my mom probably would not want me talking about that. But what about your fundraiser, Amy? Let's hear about yours.
Well, as many of you remember from yesterday, I was diagnosed in 2017, and you might have figured out by now that I don't do well sitting and waiting. So once I progressed past that haze of diagnosis and the early whirlwind, I started learning about lung cancer. I didn't know much about it at all. And as I researched, I learned the only risk factor I needed was to have a set of lungs. And I learned about the disparity of funding for lung cancer research, like Andrew pointed out earlier. And that knowledge, coupled with a very well-timed text message from one of my friends, is what started me down the path of an annual race that we call the Lung Buster.
Why did you decide to do a race?
I came from a community of runners. So my husband over there is an Ironman. I have been following him on many races, and he happens to be a very fast runner. And for several years, I captained a team of runners on a relay race that runs overnight for 200 miles, 12 women, and we would run together. Some of them were fast runners too. I was just a slow runner. But we were a community of runners. Those were the people that were closest to me, and what we knew were runners and races. So the text that I received from my friends was, "What do you think if we set up a 5K in your honor?" And at that point, they wanted to do the 5K to provide funding for my treatment and to help me. And my thing was, well, I don't need that right now. How about we start this race and we raise money for lung cancer research?
And could you tell me about the name Lung Buster? Where did that come from?
So our initial planning meeting, it was just a group of my friends. We're sitting there and we're throwing all these ideas out. And I was like, I want the race to have a really big hill. I want the people in the race to feel what it's like to have labored breathing, to be short of breath. I want it to be a real lung buster. And that's where the name came from. And from that, I think I actually have on the next slide, if you could advance it, thank you, came our slogan, Bust a Lung for Lung Cancer Research. What came after that is learning to file a permit with the city, developing a street plan for a race. You actually have to map out where every cone goes. It's pretty involved. We had to figure out how to get a porta potty on site. Something you might not think of. But one thing that was more complicated was registrations and collecting payments. Especially if we want most of the money to go for research, we had to incorporate as a nonprofit. So we did that, figured out how to do everything, and then we contacted our local newspaper, the Mukilteo Beacon, to see if they'd come out and do a story, and they've actually been incredibly supportive. David Pan is the local reporter. He comes out every single year. He took a really unflattering picture of me last year, so this year I want to make sure that I get to look at him first.
I know where I live, I see a lot of flyers advertising a bunch of different races. What did you do to make your race stand out from all the other ones?
We actually do have a lot of races in our area, but we added in a few pieces that make it unique. One of the first things I did was ask my oncologist, Keith Eaton, if he would come and deliver a pre-race speech about the importance of lung cancer research. So that picture over there on the left is our very first one. I had my speech, but Keith came out, and he's an introvert. He hates doing that stuff. But for the first few years, he would come and give a speech on what the latest advancements were in lung cancer research and why it was important that everybody there had signed up because the money was going to go to fund research. The other thing we did is, that's my husband. And you have to kind of bend the rules, but he is dressed as a lung. Those are not wings. Not wings on his back. Those are his lungs, and there's like you can kind of see the trachea coming up the backside. So he dresses up every year as the lung man. And the shtick is that if you can beat the lung man across the finish line, you get a sticker on your bib. We hold them back 5 minutes but after everybody starts, so everybody has a head start. And then he runs and he's honking that wooga horn, right, as he's running. So you hear the lung man coming behind you and you're trying to walk a little faster. What they don't know is every year I'm walking the race, and he'll run the course and come back up, and he's close to the finish line, he doubles back to find me. And then he just keeps going back and forth, and we always finish together. So many people beat the lung man.
That sounds like such a fun event. How much money can you really raise with something like this?
You might be surprised because our admission is $40, but we have sponsors, local businesses that we go and we make that really uncomfortable ask. And what we have found, which is not what I like, is that if I go and I make the ask, and it's not just my team, and I tell my story and they see me, they are very willing to sponsor our race. So they cover all of the expenses of holding the race, and we get everything from the registrations, t-shirt sales, and it comes all together. Over the last 6 years that we've done it, we have been able to donate $100,000 to the ROS1ders.
So is this something that someone can participate from anywhere in the world?
We did do it virtually during the pandemic and decided that was too much trouble. And, you know, when this is a really hyper-local event, you might be wondering, why did we spend so much time telling you about it? And the reason that Drea and I came up here is we wanted to share the story because we both came to the same conclusion after our diagnosis that something needed to be done.
Mm-hmm. Especially when you learn about the fact that limited treatments, you know, there aren't that many, and they only work for so long. And we have our whole lives ahead of ourselves.
And you learn that lung cancer, despite killing more people annually than the next 3 cancer killers combined, receives only a fraction of the funding that those cancers do.
Mm-hmm. We both felt a call to action.
We both looked for ways to make a difference for people with a ROS1 positive cancer diagnosis. And in doing so, what we did is we tapped into our own interests and talents. And we aren't the only ones. Other ROS1ders have done this. Lisa Goldman has taught classes on Zentangle over Zoom and donated the proceeds from that to the ROS1ders. Annetta has taught some Zumba classes where her entry fee is a donation to the ROS1ders. And we've had former ROS1ders who were artists who would paint pictures and then sell them online, and whatever they raised, they put into the ROS1ders.
Yeah, the key is really to just do something that you love to do, so your passion and energy for the task at hand combined with your powerful story of living with this disease, it can make a really compelling ask for your donors.
The choices Drea and I made for fundraising, though, can take a lot of time. I mean, Drea, how much time do you think you put into setting up your fundraisers?
That's actually a really hard question to answer, primarily because I truthfully had a lot of fun doing all these different fundraisers. It was a great opportunity to involve my family, my neighbors, my friends, and we just, you know, made it just a fun opportunity to do something good for research.
The Lung Buster does take a lot of time. Our planning meetings are going, our race is October, and we're currently in the sponsor seeking phase. If you know anyone in the Mukilteo area that wants to sponsor a race, I've got one. But I have a team of 7 people, and they are my Lung Buster core, and we are always working on that. So it does take a lot of time and energy.
The good news is that the ROS1ders have a way you all can help fund more seed grants. Like we saw yesterday in our lab tour, and it's much less complicated, much less involved, and there's no posing in your birthday suit. But I'll let Amy tell you more about that.
So if you've been in the Facebook group in October or November, you have probably seen my never-ending posts about fundraising. And we have it was originally Network for Good. It was purchased by Bonterra, so sometimes you see Bonterra, sometimes you see Network for Good. We have a campaign set up for the ROS1ders that anybody can go to, and they can plug in their donation. They can make it recurring, they can make it one time, they can say it's in honor of this person. So we have that main campaign that you can share an email or you can share on social media, and people can donate that way. But we also have a way for you to take the information that we've already made available for you to create your own individual version of that fundraiser. And you can, if you are open with your diagnosis, you can share on social media. If you're not open with your diagnosis, like some of you don't want to share that at work, and that's fine. But you could take a page like this and you get the link to it and you send it out in email to the family and friends that you know who might be willing to support you. So we thought that today, since we have you as a captive audience, this would be a good time to walk you through setting that page up. So if you don't have a page yet, and this is something that you can do as a patient, as a caregiver, but I would say patient and caregiver don't really need to be separate. You could have one page together that you promote. Or any of our pharma reps who are so moved by what they have seen over the last week, they could set up a page too. Or speakers, or researchers. But if you would go here, if you want to set one up today, I'm going to lead you right through it. So I've set up a tiny URL that will take you right to the page that starts the setup, or you can use that QR code. I love my QR codes. When you get there, you'll get a message like this, and it says, "Thank you for joining our fundraising team." You push the next button. At this point, you have a choice to make. They do allow you to log in with Facebook. You can do that. I chose to create mine with a new account, and then I could choose what email address because I forget that I've made it with Facebook, and then I can't get in. I get locked out. So I would do create a new account, and then next. Go ahead. And at this point, you just fill in the fields. You can see my example. I had scrolled down. I chose my email, put in my password, and I clicked Create Account. Now that you have created the account, now you have to go log in, or you click Next again to continue to the next step. Oops. Did I go and you go? I think I went. There we go. So the first thing that's going to prompt you to do is find a photo. And that's because anytime we can make a fundraising campaign personalized and make it connect to you as an individual, it's going to be more powerful. That's why when my team is walking around Mukilteo trying to get donations, they are half as successful as they are if I walk with them. And I'm not a fundraiser either. I hate it too. And the worst part for me is making that ask. So it's just forcing myself to step over that barrier of uncomfortability and tell my story and ask for that. This is way easier. Just find a picture of you. I actually have a picture of my family up there. You get to set your fundraising goal. We started at 1,000. You can change that if you think 1,000 is too much, or you think you're going to go for 100,000. It won't let you make an account? Have you ever set one up before? Okay. Well, we can check into it later. It could be that the provider might have trouble with their website today. But I'll just keep showing you. We already have pre-programmed in there the headline for your fundraiser and the secondary headline, and then your personal story. So you can leave the headlines the same. You don't have to personalize them, but you can. We'll go ahead and go next. And then your last step is to submit it for review. And that just comes to a few of us volunteers who get an email that says, hey, a new campaign's there. And we go in and look at it and make sure there aren't any missing words. And then we say, here you go. And that's it. That's how you make a fundraising page, and from there you can just take that link and share it in email, share it on social media, and people donate. I have used many times for my birthday to say, would you put a donation here instead of giving me a gift? Questions? So there's an initial email they send you after it's made, and because I also look for that, I search my email for the one from, I think it still says Network for Good on that one. And it will give you a link to go back to your site, and then you just log in with the email and password that you chose. Good, that's a good question, because many people do have trouble with that, and we find that they often create a second page. Yes, Lisa.
Also, I know if you already have an account and you want to start a new, you can't change the, like the total anymore you're asked, right? Like it always shows what you've already raised in there, that's still the same.
Yes, so let's say Lisa last year met her goal, and she wants to this year have a new goal. It still shows what was raised, but I think we can actually take that out
Yeah,
on the admin side.
I feel like a lot of times in your goal, like say you put in 1,000 and you quickly hit 1,000, I feel like people are a little bit less to donate. Or it's like, oh, cool, they met their goal. Well, if you like to keep changing that, but if you already have 1,000 in there from a different one, so if there's a way to change it back to show it starts zero or starts over, I'm not sure.
If I remember right, we can't take your donations away, but we can increase your goal.
Yeah, okay.
So that's what I've increased mine every time I met it. I increase it. Look, I have this goal that's not met yet. Oh, oops.
You could go raise it a little bit more, especially if they came in like really fast.
Yep.
I also really want to recommend sharing by email, because sometimes the algorithms on Facebook will not show your page. So, just a little bit extra. That's what I found.
Yep. I know we mentioned a couple of times Lung Cancer Awareness Month. I just want to make sure everybody is aware that that is in November. That is our designated month. We come right after the October of pink ribbons. Are there any other questions?
There are white ribbons out there for your taking, so if you want to use that as part of your photo, that's fine too.
I want to add a couple other things, which is occasionally we'll get a larger single donation, like from the Lung Buster Walk, for example. And I would encourage you not to go through Network for Good for that. Or if you're personally organizing a bake sale, or I've done art classes or whatnot, if you just send us a check, then we don't have to pay the royalty or the percentage cut that Network for Good takes. So
The other option is the PayPal Giving Fund, which is available online, and they do not take any deduction from it, and we will get all your information that way also. So you can find the ROS1ders through the PayPal Giving Fund. PayPal will take money out. PayPal Giving Fund will not. Yes, there's a link. We have a page at the very top of our website. There's a link that says donate, and you can find information about that. Also, if any of you happen to have a donor advised fund, we have a new link that you can use to donate that way.
Janet, can you explain what a donor advised fund is?
Yes, okay. So actually, Network for Good is a donor advised fund. It's one example. You give your money to them. They are a registered charity, so they will send you the acknowledgement of your donation so you can use it for tax deductions, and you can tell them where you want the money to go. But the money we get from them actually comes from Network for Good. So there are many financial Vanguard, Fidelity, whatever, you can set up this donor advised fund if you need to, say, make a donation. If you're fortunate enough to be wanting to make a large donation, you can put that in your donor advised fund, but you don't have to donate the money that year. You can donate it whenever you want to. And the donor advised fund handles all of the necessary tax issues, and they will send you a tax receipt, and then you don't have to worry about that part of it.
One other thing I want to say is, it's sort of painful for Amy and I to blast you with the messages on the Facebook group from September through December. We're just trying to help all of us to get that money for the seed funds for research. Janet and I have never taken a paycheck from ROS1ders. This is a volunteer organization. We know how hard it is to raise money. We want to see that money go to research. We really try to honor that and be very careful with your money. We spend very, very little on any kind of administrative stuff. We have I forget what gold star rating or whatever it's called.
Yeah, we're Gold Star on GuideStar, and we're not yet rated on Charity Navigator, only because you have to have 3 years of tax returns, and we incorporated in 2019. So we're waiting for them to finish processing our third-year tax return. But we are less than 20. I think we're like 15% of the money goes to admin, and that's because we pay someone to do our tax returns.
But most of the money you raise is going to help you, to help pay for these seed funds, to generate more research to save our lives. So we really appreciate anything you can do to help us with that.
Perfect.
Is there a place on our website where we show like how much collectively we all raise towards the seed fund?
So no, we haven't done that because we'd have to go through and pull out every single account that's in Network for Good and pull that. We can do a collective amount. We probably should have a number on the website that shows that. But so last year we issued 3 $75,000 seed grants, and we're doing at least 2 this year.
So we have some big hills in Columbia, South Carolina. We have people who seek out 5Ks. Would you be willing to share your infrastructure for lung busters with other locations?
Of course. Yep.
I actually had a question on that. So you said that you had to register as a nonprofit. Could you skip that and just do it through the ROS1ders?
You could collect the money and then send it as a check to the ROS1ders.
The one thing we would ask you to do, though, is that you keep track of everyone who's donated and give us a list of the people we need to send tax receipts to.
Mm.
I think mine was going to be similar to what he said. For those of you who have done fundraising, for those of us who haven't, I think it might be a good idea. It's kind of intimidating, the logistics and all. I know you've learned a lot of hard lessons in doing it, and I know you have a cheat sheet of some sort, an outline that you follow. Perhaps you could share by way of a how-to for those that might be interested in doing fundraising.
Maybe when we find a meetup facilitator, we can host a meetup on how to host a race, and I'll share all my stuff. But you can always send me an email, and I'd be willing to share any of our documents and set up and answer questions too.
You will also see, this is what we do try to do in those posts in the internal Facebook group. From starting in September, we post instructions, we have email and phone number links to Amy, me, and Ronan for technology assistance. If, for example, the password isn't working, he's the one I'm going to call, let him know we're coming again. So we do try to handhold, and you can reach out to us at any time.
And they do provide you with an email template, so you can just plug your information in if you're not sure what to do the first time around.
Yes, Jim?
Circling back on the lung cancer awareness month, you mentioned October being a big month, and we all know that, right? And I heard something pretty profound on a podcast. This makes a lot of sense. It's that the reason that we know so
Yes. If you didn't hear that,
There's a great T-shirt out there that said, "Lung cancer, it's right under your boobs."
That was me. I used to sell a T-shirt that said that. And then I had his hat that said "Save the Lulus" because they used to have like "Save the Tatas," you know. But anyway.
well, we are at the end of our allotted time for this segment. I did want to hand off to you, Janet, to close out the conference for those of us who are not patients and caregivers.
Thank you to our sponsors and our speakers who are professional advocates for coming to join us here today. Thank you to all of the patients and caregivers who came from so many different places to be here. We had no idea we would get this kind of a response, and it means a lot. So thank you for coming.